Odlo. Okay, does everybody have a sheet in front of them? Uri? This is for you, my friend. Uri, יש לך הזדמנות עכשיו? אורי, יש לך הזדמנות עכשיו?
איזה דבר, איזה מדהים.
Okay, hi, Hanan, Ellie, wow. Oh, you see, my whole mood changed right now. You see? When they come, they have this effect on me. I don't know what it is. It's like my grandparents here in Houston. I don't know.
I saw today a body.
Oh, you did?
I visited him already twice.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay, so we are live on Facebook. And because we are live, it's probably a good idea to start the class. Don't worry about it. It's fine. Rabbi Mastery is going to take care of the soup. Don't worry about it. Okay. So here we go. What I want to talk about today is a few ideas. Number one is the idea of using our kochot for the good. That's one idea. And number two, I want to talk about the craziness of Lot. Okay, I titled the class Lot's Split Personality. We don't find many examples of people with split personalities in the Torah, but with Lot, he is a clear example. Meaning in the Torah, we sometimes have tzaddikim, we sometimes have rishaim, pure good, pure evil, but with Lot, it's very, very tricky. Okay, so before we begin, you'll take a look at the Parsha, you see how the three malachim show up, and Avraham Avinu is suffering because of the third day of his Brit Milah. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants Avraham to rest, and he doesn't want anyone bothering him, so he brings out this extreme heat, kind of like Houston, okay? And that basically causes Avraham to stay inside his tent. But he's so bothered, and Hashem sees how bothered he is, that Hashem decides, I'm going to relieve him of his anguish, and I'm going to send him guests. And he sends him 3 guests. One of them is to inform Sarah and Abraham that they're going to have a child. One is to heal Avraham Avinu. And one is to destroy the city of Sodom. Now we see a beautiful example of Hachnasat Orchim in Avraham Avinu by virtue of the fact that he's sick in his 3rd day. He's conversing with God. He's having a dialogue with Hashem. And in the middle of the dialogue with Hashem, he just runs in the opposite direction, and he sees the 3 people, and he goes to them. Now, Avraham Avinu has a beautiful midah of wanting to do chesed and achnasat orchim, but Hashem is in the middle of talking to you. Are you allowed to move in the middle of Shemona Esrei? If you're in the middle of the Amidah, are you allowed to move? Why not? Because you're in the middle of dialogue with Ribono Shel Olam. You're in the middle of talking to God. You're not allowed to move in the middle of Shemona Esrei. Avraham Avinu is in the middle of talking to God, and all of a sudden, 3 malachim show up, and shoo! Next thing you know, sorry God, gotta go. I am going to greet these three malachim. How is Avraham able to do this? So the answer is, Rabbi Master actually told us this afternoon, that if you have an opportunity for Hachnasat Orchim, and you have Torah on the other hand, even though we say every day, Talmud Torah Keneged Kulam, even though Torah normally comes first, if you're in the mitzvah, we also have a concept of en ma'avidin ala mitzvot. Unless you have someone else to accommodate the guest, you have to deal with the guests as they're in front of you. And so he had these 3 guests in front of him. He's not about to let them go on their own. He didn't realize at the time that they are malachim, that they are angels. But either way, we know that in the Torah, there's no such thing as juxtaposition happening for no reason. What does juxtaposition mean? Juxtaposition means, in the Torah, we have one thing followed by another. You have 2 totally, seemingly unrelated topics, but if they're mentioned together in the Torah, then we have the right and the ability to create a link and a connection between the 2. And so what happens in the Torah right after the episode of Avraham inviting the guests? We have the episode of the destruction of Sodom v'Amorah. What does one thing have to do with the other? What does the Hachnasat Orchim of Avraham Avinu have to do with Sodom v'Amorah? What does one thing have to do with the other?
The chesed.
Now you might answer, well, Rabbi, it's very simple. One of the 3 angels was tasked by God in destroying Sodom. So as soon as they were finished healing Avraham, telling Avraham and Sarah about the child that they were going to have, the next task was to destroy Sodom. So the Torah segues into that topic. But the truth is is that there's another idea. And that idea is given by Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky. And Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky explains something unbelievable. And he says that the Torah is coming to teach you the difference between someone who's doing a mitzvah, l'shem mitzvah, and someone that's not doing it l'shem mitzvah. What does that mean? Meaning, have you ever seen someone in your life doing something not good that you are very good at? Okay? You're good at something. You're very good at waking up early in the morning. You're very good at eating kosher. You're very good at praying. And you see someone that's not as good as you, and you feel like, oh, lo yafeh, not nice. And you sometimes go over to them and you say, it's not really nice the way you're praying. And you know why you feel good about yourself? Because you are good at praying. It's a lot easier to tell someone off about something they're not doing well if you yourself excel in that endeavor. Do you hear what I'm saying? Do you hear what I'm saying? If you're a person that has an easy time getting up in the morning, my dear friend Tzion here, for example, and then you come to Tefillah. Tefillah starts at 7. Tzion is always here at least 6:55, 6:50. Tzion is here early. He's very gifted in his ability to be here on time. I would argue that it's a lot easier for someone like Tzion. I'm not saying it's right or wrong yet, but it's a lot easier for Tzion to come over to someone who comes late and say to them, Mr. Frank, you're coming late to Bet Knesset, lo yafeh. It's easier for him to say that to someone because he's always here on time. But that's not a good thing. That's not a good thing. And so Rav Kamenetsky says, we learn from Avraham Avinu the beauty of Avraham Avinu. Why? Because Sodom V'Amorah was the opposite of Achnasat Orchim. Do you know what Sodom V'Amorah would do when a person would invite guests? They would kill them. You're not allowed to invite guests according to Sodomite theology. If you invited guests, off with your head, you're finished, right? You're finished. And so how are they supposed to do it? So the Torah is teaching you, Avraham Avinu, straight to Sodom, to teach you that Avraham Avinu, when he knew that Sodom is about to get destroyed, Avraham Avinu could have said, listen, I excel in the mitzvah of Achnasat Orchim. And I know that Sodom V'Amorah, they don't even believe in Achnasat Orchim. So I'm going to let them die because they're deserving of death. You follow? Not only did Avraham Avinu not do that, but he prayed to Hashem to save them, even though they didn't even keep the mitzvah of Achnasat Orchim. Do you follow the point that I'm making here? The idea that we're mentioning here is the famous idea of Al Tadin et Chavercha, Al Tadun et Chavercha, Ad Shetageh Limkoma. There is a concept that we learn in Pirkei Avot. Pirkei Avot in Perek Bet, in the 2nd chapter and the 5th Mishnah, we learn the idea that you're not allowed to judge someone until you are in their place. Now, can I ask you a question? I ask you this all the time. Right? When are you ever going to be in the place of your friend? Never. You are never going to be able to have grown up in their family. You're never going to be able to have grown up with their friends. There are so many factors that are out of your control that go into someone's upbringing and personality that the Torah is basically telling you it is impossible for you to judge someone because you never know what's going on in their mind. You don't know what's going on in their world. And so you have no right to assume that you know who they are or what they're all about. Was that my voice? Right? You cannot possibly assume to know what it is that they're going through. And so that's why, for example, if Tzion, and I have to say, Tzion never tells anyone off, but if Tzion sees someone showing up at 7:05, myself included, and he thinks to himself, I don't understand. I'm here every day at 7 o'clock. A person can't get on time for tefillah. He might be justified in thinking this way, but it would be wise to not say anything to anyone. Why? Because he doesn't know what's going on in someone else's life. And it takes a lot of self-control. Now, here's a question that I have to ask you now. And I don't, offhand right now, I don't have an answer to this question. What about hocheach tocheach et amitecha? What about rebuking your friend? There is a mitzvah in the Torah to set your friend straight. And so On the one hand, we could say, like Rav Kamenetsky is teaching us, that when you are gifted in one area, just because you're gifted in one area, that doesn't give you a green light to admonish someone who's weak in that area. But on the other hand, if Tzion has a chance to teach someone the right way and tell them, you need to be coming on time for tefillah, then Tzion has a responsibility to do that. So where is the fine line between the two?
That one is for do and don't, and one is for something of ability. So ability, each one of us have a different ability. Some people have to eat only kosher and they have. But if you see someone about to take a bite of something not kosher, okay, tell them, listen, are you aware you're eating something not kosher? This you can do. But something for somebody to wake up, to come, all those things, you don't know what's going on in
So
his life.
Tzion is suggesting that the mitzvah of hochiach tochiach is when I see a person about to do an avera, I have an obligation to save him from doing an avera. But if it has to do with me butting into his business or trying to shift him or change him, then I have to be very careful. Either way, this is one lesson that we learn from the Parasha. We learn from Avraham Avinu, from the fact that the Torah switches straight from Avraham, straight to Sodom. We see this idea that even though Avraham had every reason to say, God, destroy them. I don't want anything to do with them. They violate the mitzvah that I hold so dearly. The mitzvah of achnasat orchim. Not only are they not involved in achnasat orchim, they will kill a person for being involved in achnasat orchim. Not only did Avraham not condone their destruction, Avraham prayed for them to be saved. That's one idea.
I want to ask a question about it.
Yes.
Is it possible that's one of the tests that God test Abraham
Was to see if he was going to pray for them or not.
Between Noah and him, Noah would not pray for the people.
That's right. That was one of the differences between Avraham and Noah, is that Noah, 120 years, he's building the ark. Why did it take him 120 years? You know, I know he was an old man. He was 600 years old. But still, 120 years is a long time. So the Torah tells us that Hashem wanted to give the world time to do teshuvah. But teshuvah requires kiruv, right, Uri? Requires Chabad, requires torch, right? It requires kiruv. You need people out there to bring the Jews closer to God. Right, Uri? Like Chabad, right? So here's the question. So the question is, so in 120 years, Noah couldn't find anyone to, Noah couldn't sway anybody's heart to getting closer to God? Do you know who ended up making it into the Teva? Besides for the animals, it was Noah, his wife, his 3 sons, and their wives, and their children. What happened? 120 years and you couldn't change anyone? This was the difference between Noah and Avraham. And so now I want to talk about Lot. So take a look at the first source on your sheet. Okay, if you have a sheet in front of you, I don't have any extras. Yeah. I know, but don't. Nah, I think it's fine. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about the soup. Huh? את רוצה את המרק? Do you want it? Yeah. Right. I just don't want to. Okay. So here we go. So here we go. You ready? If you take a look at the first pasuk, the pasuk says like this. Okay. Everybody have your sheets? It says, Vayavo shnei hamalachim Sedoma ba'erev, veLot yoshev b'shar Sedom, vayar Lot vayakom likratam. The malachim come to Lot, and Lot is greeting them at the entrance of the city. Okay? Can you just close that door because now it's closed. It's fine. Right? So we know from the fact that it mentions that Lot was at the entrance of the city, we learn that Lot was one of the leaders of the city. Vayishtachu apayim arza, he bowed down to the angels. Vayomer, and he said, Hinei na Adonai, suru na el bet avdechem velinu v'rachatzu raglechem. He told the malachim, please stay here for the night and wash your feet. V'yishkamtem v'alachtem l'darkechem, and then you will go on your way. Vayomer lo ki barachov nalin. They said to Lot, no, we don't want to stay by you. We'll stay in the streets. Vayivtzar ba meod. And he pressed them and he pushed them. Vayasuru elav, and they came. Vayavu ad beto vayasla mishtu matzot afa vayochelu. He made for them a feast, and they ate matzot. Why are they eating matzot?
It's the fastest way.
Why are they keeping Pesach? Why is Lot keeping Pesach? Why do we eat matzah on Pesach? Ki b'chipazon yatzu mimitzrayim.
So I said it's the fastest way.
The reason why we eat matzah is to commemorate that the Jewish people didn't have time for their bread to rise, and so they have matzah. When did the story of Pesach happen? It happened hundreds and hundreds of years after Lot's lifetime. Why is Lot having matzah right now? So Rashi says, no, Eli's asking a good question. Maybe it's not Pesach. But Rashi says, take a look. So Rashi asks your question. Rashi asks your question, and look at the next Rashi. Look at the next source on number bet. Says Rashi, Umatzot hafa Pesach haya. It was the holiday of Passover. It was the holiday of Passover, even though Pesach was hundreds of years later. So the answer is, we have a tradition that the tzaddikim of old kept the Torah. Even though they weren't given the Torah yet, they knew the Torah through Ruach HaKodesh. We also have from Rashi that Avraham Avinu also kept Pesach. When Og came and told Avraham Avinu that his nephew Lot was kidnapped, we are told that Avram was in the middle of baking matzot. What was Avraham Avinu doing? Baking matzot. So the idea is Avraham Avinu and Lot, for that matter, they knew which time of year is the time of cherut, the time of freedom. And so even though the story of Pesach didn't happen, they still kept the Torah, which involved keeping Pesach, keeping matzah, eating matzah. Now we know that when Lot and Avraham Avinu separated, what's the reason why Lot separated from Avraham Avinu?
כי סדום היה לה יותר דשא ולמרעה שלו. He had more grass for his cattle.
Chazak u'baruch. So if you take a look at the next source, you see, Vayisa Lot et einav. Lot raised his eyes. Vayar et kol kikar hayarden. And he saw the entire plain of the Jordan. Ki chula mashke. It was all fertile. Lifnei shachet Hashem et Sodom et Amorah. This was before God destroyed Sodom. Kigan Hashem ke'eretz Mitzrayim bo'achat zohar. So what do we see? What does it mean bo'achat zohar? Take a look at the next source. Rashi explains. What does bo'achat zohar mean? Ad zohar u'midrash agada dorsha ligenai al shahayu shtufei zima bachar lo lot bishchunatam. You see, if we didn't have Rashi, the literal translation of the pasuk would leave us believing that the only reason why Lot went to Sodom was because it was like America. It was a land of opportunity. It was a fertile land. It was a great land for him to make money. But then if you look at Rashi, Rashi explains that this was a land steeped in immorality. And so Lot wanted a part of that immorality.
Las Vegas.
Huh? Las Vegas. Right?
New Orleans.
And so we see Vayivchar lo Lot et kol kikar Yarden vayisa Lot mikedem vayiparedu ish me'al achiv. They separated, and one of the reasons why they separated was because the shepherds of Lot were involved in eating other people's property, and the shepherds of Avraham were muzzled; they were covered, and so they weren't eating in other people's property. And there was a fight that broke out between the two shepherds. And so again, take a look at the Midrash in the next source, source Vav. The Midrash says, Vayisa Lot mikedem. Lot left to the east, to the Kikar Yarden. Hisia atzmo mikadmono shel olam. He moved to the east of the world. Amar, and he said, Efshi lo be'Avraham velo be'Eloho. I don't want anything to do with Avraham. I don't want anything to do with his God. And so here's the question of the class tonight. The question is, how do we understand that on the one hand, Lot was seemingly a person who valued Torah, he valued God, he kept Pesach, he went with Avraham to Eretz Yisrael, he wanted to host the Malachim, a tremendous act of Achnasat Orchim. He even put his life in jeopardy, right? Why? Because we see that the people of Sodom were ready to kill. They were ready to kill. And he took them in and he locked the door. And so we see that on the one hand, Lot had a tremendous element of godliness to him, a tremendous element of kindness to him. Yet we see on the other hand that there's a tremendous lack of decency in Lot. that he's going to Sodom for the Parnasah. He's going to Sodom for the Shtufei Zima, right? He's going because of the immorality of Sodom. And also, when he took in the Malachim of Sodom, what did he do? He said, take my daughters instead. He left his 2 daughters outside and said, I'm willing to give you my daughters instead. They didn't end up taking the daughters. But how is he willing to do this? So how do we understand this split personality of Lot? How do we understand this idea? So, to answer this question, Rabbi Ruderman explains that if you take a look at the story of Yaakov Avinu, when Yaakov Avinu is approaching Esav Harasha, he sends messengers to Esav. And he says to the messengers, he says, Im Lavan Garti, Vaechar Ad Ata. That the reason why you haven't seen me all this time is because I've been living with Lavan. And Rashi explains, if you take a look at the last source on the page, right? It says, Garti Bigematria Taryag. The gematria of Garti is 613. And Yaakov Avinu was telling Esav, don't mess with me because I've kept the 613 mitzvot, Velo lamariti mima'asav haraim. And I didn't learn from the wicked ways of Lavan. So here's the question. There's nothing extra in the Torah, and there's nothing extra in Rashi. If Yaakov was looking to threaten Esav, then Yaakov could have simply said to Esav, I kept the 613 mitzvot. And that would have been enough. Esav would have understood not to mess with Yaakov, because Yaakov has kept the 613 mitzvot. Why does Yaakov also have to tell Esav, not only did I keep the 613 mitzvot, but I didn't learn from his ways? Why is that? Why does he have to say both things?
I just didn't want him to think that since he left his father and his mother, he become a different person. So is the Bechorah and everything, to continue the continuation of Yaakov is not going to be to him.
Okay.
He sort of broke the link.
Okay. So Rabbi Ruderman explains that what Yaakov is teaching us is that just because a person keeps mitzvot, that doesn't mean that they necessarily follow in the ways of Hashem. This is the yesod. This is the principle. It wasn't enough for Yaakov to tell Esav that I kept the mitzvot, because a person could keep the mitzvot and still not follow in the ways of God. Like Lot. But he was telling him, not only did I keep the mitzvot, I also followed in the way of Hashem. But there are some people like Lot, who we are about to prove right now, are people that have this element of duality. It's a dual personality where on the one hand, they keep the mitzvot, but on the other hand, they involve themselves in all sorts of shtuyot, all sorts of problematic behaviors. And not necessarily are those behaviors completely contrary to the Torah, but I always like to say that a person always has to ask themselves, not only can I do something, but a person has to also ask the question of, should I do something? It's not enough just to ask, can I? But should I? A person, whenever they're making a decision, they have to be asking themselves, what would Hashem want me to do? Does Hashem want me spending all this time watching this movie? Does Hashem want me spending all this time working, making money? There's nothing wrong with making money, but I would argue that maybe there is something wrong with excessively involving ourselves in making money. If you have a limited amount of time in your life, okay, and you know that your life is limited, then what is it going to do to add extra hours to the amount that you already have? You know, one of the questions they're going to ask us when we come up to Shamayim is, were you kovea itim la Torah? Did you set aside time for Torah? How does a person decide what is enough time to dedicate for Torah? A person has only one judge, and that is himself. A person has to be honest with himself. How much do I need to live? How much do I need to survive? How much do I need to put food on the table, to be able to put my kids through school, to be able to afford the basic necessities, Jewish school, right? High tuition. How much do I need to survive and then I can close shop, and then I can devote the rest of my time to Torah. That is the question. And the question is, what's my priority? Is it that I live for my work and I make time for Torah, or I live for my Torah and I make time for my work? I have to work, so I make time for my work. It's understood. It's a mitzvah to work. You have to support your family. The Torah told us that we have to work. But where does your heart lie? Where do you, what's on your mind all day? Are you thinking, where is your heart? Are you thinking about the next dollar? Are you thinking about the next business deal? Or are you thinking about how you are going to become a more elevated individual? Now, even though we can find godliness and elevated behaviors outside the Torah, meaning even if you're at work, in your working environment, like we spoke about 2 weeks ago in our class, right? There's many ways through our working environment to connect to God, doing our business ethically, right? Uriel, I'm sure you can think of examples where you have workers where they're telling you, Uriel, I want to take a little bit of a break. And you know that a little bit of a break means more than a little bit of a break, right? There's many scenarios in work where people take advantage of the system, and they can either express immorality in the laws of just business ethics, or they can elevate themselves and express a tremendous work ethic. But you have a decision to make in life. And that is, am I going to stay consistent with the ways of the Torah? Because it's not enough in God's eyes for us to just fill the quota sheet with mitzvah. Did I pray? Check. Did I learn? Check. Did I do kindness? Check. Okay, now I can go and waste my time. Now I can go and watch all the movies. Now I can go and spend the next full day involved in my work, even if I don't need it. That's not what God's looking for. God is looking for someone that is willing to give his everything to his own elevated spirituality, to change himself, to change the world around him. No one's saying you can't work, but to turn yourself and your mind and your heart aligning themselves towards Hashem. That everything that you do, and I think we can all relate to the different types of people that we come in contact with. You have some people that are workaholics, okay? They might make it to minyan in the morning, they may make it to prayer, but then you won't see them till 9 p.m., right? And they're working, all they talk about is work, all they breathe is work. I don't judge these people, but I don't want to be these people. And then you have some people, right? We're not naming names right now, Shoshanna. Okay, right? But then you have some people, they're also very busy, but they somehow find time to invite people for shiur at home at night. They find time to visit the sick person in the hospital. They find time here and there to learn Torah, to make a learning group. You know how many people I see on Facebook doing these lunch and learns? Where do they find time to do these lunch and learns? The answer is, if you want to find the time, you'll find the time. So many people today, they say, I don't have the time. Let me check my schedule. Let me check my calendar. Azov.
Nobody has time.
Right? Nobody has time. Can I tell you something? Everybody has time. Everybody has time. If you want, you can be as busy as you want. Right? If you want, you can be as busy as you want. If you want, you could give as much time to Torah as you want. It's all a question of your...
Thank God we got internet today. I know that you can Rabbi.
YouTube, yes.
Right?
There's a lot on YouTube.
No, it's not.
Rabbi, nobody has time. Time is something you make.
Time is something you make. If Torah is important enough for you, then you'll make the time for it. And you know what will enable you to make the time for it? If you appreciate it. If you see what it brings to you in life, you'll appreciate it. Okay, I want to give you guys a chance to eat your soup. So give me 5 more minutes to show you how the dual personality of Lot transcended his own descendants. Take a look at the next source. Vayelech Avram, kasher diber elav Hashem, vayelech ito Lot. When Avraham is leaving what is modern-day Syria, otherwise known as Haran, and he's moving too, right? This is why the Syrians take pride in Haran, because Aram Tova, right? If you take a look in the first pasuk, it says that Lot voluntarily went with Avraham. But then if you take a look at the next pasuk, it says, Vayikach Avraham ve'et Lot ben Achiv. What does Vayikach mean? That Avraham had to take Lot. You see, one pasuk says that Lot went by himself. The next pasuk makes it seem that Lot was forcibly taken. What's the difference? Part of Lot wanted to go to Eretz Yisrael because God commanded him to, but part of Lot did not want to go with Avraham Avinu because he knew that he wants something gashmi, kulo gashmi, right? Now, what happened with Lot's daughters? Vatashkena et avihen yain balayla hu, vatavo bechira vatishkav et avia velo yada beshichva uvkuma. We know that after Sodom was destroyed, the daughters of Lot were with him in a cave, and they thought that the entire world was destroyed. And so they figured that it is our mitzvah to procreate and to bring back mankind to the world. And so the first daughter got her father drunk, Lot got him drunk and had relations with her father. And the next night, Lot voluntarily had relations with his second daughter. And so you see, look at Rashi, source Yud Aleph. It says Vatishkav et avia, uvetzeira ktiv Vatishkev or Vatishkav imo. By the older daughter, it says Vatishkav et aviha, and for the younger daughter, it says Vatishkav imo. What's the difference between the older one and the younger one? Says Rashi, Tzeira, the younger one, lefi shelo patcha biznut, she's not the one who initiated the younger one. The older one initiated in the first night, but the second night it was Lot who initiated. So, Tzeira lefi shelo patcha biznut, el achota limdata, chiser alea hakatuv, velo piresh genuta. The Torah saved her from degradation. The Torah tells you openly, okay, her degradation, that she initiated the sexual immorality. Now, but on the other hand, if you look at the Gemara, take a look at the last source on the page, the Gemara says something very, very interesting. Amar Rav Chia bar Avin, Amar Rav Yoshua ben Korcha. Rav Chia bar Avin says in the name of Yoshua ben Korcha, Leolam yakdim adam ledavar mitzvah. A person should always run to do a mitzvah. Why? Shebischar laila achat shekidma bechira letzeira zachta v'kadmeta arba dorot lemalchut. Guess who came out of the union between Lot and his elder daughter? David HaMelech, Ruth. David HaMelech. So the Torah seems to say from the Gemara that it was a good thing that she went ahead and had relations with her father. And so here we see, yes, the Bechorah. So here we see, my friends, that the same dual personality that Lot had was transferred genetically to his own children. And you see this in his two daughters. One daughter ran to do the Avirah, and the other daughter did it for the mitzvah, thinking that it was to procreate the world.
Then you have a purpose for living. If you like matanot, what's your point of life?
I'll tell you something else.
That's not amazing.
Nachon, but it's the attitude. It's the attitude. I'll give you another continuity. Who came out of this union? Ruth. We have the story of Ruth and Orpah. Ruth and Orpah were Moabite. They were Moavim. They were from the tribe of. They were from the nation of Moab. And they were with their mother-in-law, Naomi. Naomi was Jewish. And they were escorting her to Eretz Yisrael. When it was time to cross into the border, Naomi knew that the Jews are not going to want to take their daughters-in-law, because we know in Judaism we don't encourage people to join if they're not ready for it. And so what happens? Ruth and Orpah have two very different reactions to Naomi. The first reaction is that they both say, Naomi, no, we want to come with you. But then Naomi says, no, trust me, it's better if you go back. So what happens? Orpah goes back to Moab, and Ruth follows Naomi. The Gemara tells us that on the first night that Orpah made it back to Moab, she had sexual immorality as a prostitute with many, many people. She became a zonah, and she became involved in Vayeira. While we know that Ruth ended up becoming a tzadeket and ended up giving birth to David HaMelech. Do you know who Orpah gave birth to eventually? Goliath. Goliath, who David HaMelech was going to fight with. Goliath represented all the kochot of Gashmiyut, the kochot of Teva, of Ta'ava, the kochot of lust. He was a big giant who was involved in base physicality. And David HaMelech was involved in Ruchaniyut. So you see how David HaMelech represented the side of Lot, which seeked Ruchaniyut, and Goliath and Orpah, and that daughter, the first daughter, represented the side of Lot that was after base physicality. The side of Lot that wanted something devoid, that was lacking in Ruchaniyut. And so, the idea that we learn here, my friends, is that in life, we always tread two sides. We always have a side that's pulling us to the Ruchaniyut, and a side that's pulling us to the Gashmiyut. And we don't want to be living our lives like Lot, in the sense that, are we going to be doing both the good and the bad at the same time? We want to be choosing the side of Tov, the side of good, as much as we possibly can, and to stay as consistent as possibly we can. And hopefully if we do that, we limit the Yetzer Hara, we follow the Yetzer Tov, and we stay as consistent as we can in the ways of Hashem. Bezrat Hashem.